Hi, I'm Lena, and welcome to Super Data JP, the channel where we turn Japan's real estate and cost of living numbers into answers you can actually use. Every video here is built on verified government data, not opinions and not guesses. Whether you're planning to invest, relocate, or just curious what life in Japan really costs, you're in the right place. Let's get into today's numbers.
Marry a Japanese citizen, and you can buy property here. That's the assumption behind half the comment sections on this topic, and it's flatly wrong, because that right never needed unlocking in the first place. What marriage actually changes is almost nothing like what people expect, and some of it cuts the other way. Third video in our visa and residency series, after the business manager visa and the highly skilled professional visa. This time, marriage, and the real difference between the myth and the paperwork. Start with the myth. Foreign nationals do not need to marry a Japanese citizen, hold permanent residency, or have any specific visa at all to buy real estate in Japan. This has been true since 1994, when Japan joined the WTO's General Agreement on Trade and Services and chose not to file a reservation on land transactions. Legally, discriminating against foreign buyers was taken off the table then, and it has stayed off. The one real exception, since 2021, a security law monitors land near military bases and border islands after purchase. It's oversight of how the land is used, not a restriction on who can buy it. So if marriage doesn't unlock property rights that didn't already exist, what does it actually change? Four things, and most of them have nothing to do with buying a house. First, the visa itself. The spouse or child of Japanese national visa is granted for 6 months/1 year/3 years/5 years, at the immigration officer's discretion. The Japanese spouse's income matters for renewals, roughly 2 million yen to 3 million yen a year, $12,346 to $18,519, is the practical benchmark reviewers look for, alongside proof the marriage is genuine and ongoing. Immigration doesn't take genuine on faith either. Renewal reviews can include an in-person interview, photos spanning the relationship, proof you actually share an address, and a written account of how the couple met, built specifically to catch marriages arranged purely to obtain a visa. Second, and this is the real headline, marriage is its own fast track to permanent residency. Same 10-year standard we covered last video, but the spouse of a Japanese national only needs a genuine marriage of 3+ years, combined with just 1 year of actual residence in Japan. 1 year of residence, against a 10-year standard, a 90% cut. That's confirmed directly in the same revised permanent residency guideline, effective February 24, 2026, that we cited for the highly skilled professional visa. The marriage route also waives 2 of the 3 standard tests, the good conduct requirement and the independent livelihood/asset and skill requirement. What doesn't get waived is the national interest requirement, tax and pension compliance. Your tax and pension record still has to be clean. Don't confuse this with citizenship, though. Permanent residency keeps your original nationality. Naturalization, becoming a Japanese citizen outright, runs on almost the same numbers under a separate law: 3 years living in Japan while currently married, or 3 years married plus 1 year of residence. But it's a different process, and it generally requires giving up your original citizenship. Third, financing. Most Japanese banks require permanent residency for a standard mortgage, which quietly locks a lot of foreign residents out of buying at all, married or not. Marriage can open a specific door here. Some lenders, SBI Shinsei Bank is a documented example, will approve a mortgage for a non-PR foreign resident when spouse holds Japanese nationality, or PR, and co-signs as joint guarantor. It's not a free pass, though. Guarantor arrangements typically come with a higher interest rate than a standard permanent resident loan, and the bank is now underwriting your spouse's income and credit history as much as yours, so a shaky financial picture on either side can sink the application. Fourth, and this is the part almost nobody expects, Japan runs on a separate property system by default, under Civil Code Article 762. Whatever's titled in one spouse's name, before or during the marriage, legally belongs to that spouse alone. Concretely, if your Japanese spouse buys the home and the deed only has their name on it, you can live there for 20 years and still have no ownership stake on paper, regardless of how much you paid toward it. One partial counterweight: property whose ownership isn't clearly documented is legally presumed to be jointly held. But that's a fallback for ambiguous cases, not something to rely on for your actual home. If the marriage ends, Civil Code Article 768 allows a financial settlement that accounts for both spouses' contributions, but it has to be negotiated or litigated. It doesn't automatically hand you half the house. And separately from property, divorce puts the visa itself at risk, which is the opposite of what most people assume marriage buys them. By law, going 6+ months without actually engaging in spousal activity, which includes life after a divorce, makes the resident status eligible for revocation. There are recognized exceptions: temporarily escaping domestic violence, caring for a sick relative abroad, with re-entry permission. Outside those, the clock is real. There's also a hard legal deadline most people don't know about. Divorce or the death of your Japanese spouse must be reported to immigration within 14 days. Missing it is itself a separate compliance problem. Now the genuine upside nobody markets: marriage creates an automatic legal right that no amount of years together as an unmarried couple ever will: inheritance. If your Japanese spouse passes away, your statutory share is 1/2 with children as co-heirs, 2/3 if their parents are the other heirs, 3/4 against siblings, or all, 100%, if you're the only heir. Compare that to an unmarried partner, regardless of how long the relationship lasted: 0%, no automatic statutory right at all. No paperwork, no negotiation, the marriage certificate alone does this. One nuance worth knowing: cross-border inheritance can still get complicated depending on which country's law ends up governing a given asset, so a will that explicitly covers property in both countries is worth the cost for couples who own anything outside Japan too. Put the real numbers together: a couple married 3 years, with the foreign spouse having lived in Japan for 1 year. That couple can file for permanent residency today, against a 10-year standard most people assume applies to everyone. No points calculation required, unlike the highly skilled professional route. This matters for anyone already married to a Japanese national renewing their visa, couples weighing when to apply for permanent residency, and anyone assuming marriage alone secures their financial stake in a shared home. Practical steps: put both names on the property title if you want real co-ownership, keep tax and pension payments current for the national interest test, and know the 14-day notification deadline before you ever need it. Next in this series, Japan's newer J-Find visa, for job hunting after graduation. Marriage doesn't buy you property rights in Japan, those were already yours. It buys you a faster path to permanent residency, easier financing in specific cases, real inheritance rights, and a visa risk most people never see coming until a divorce is already underway. Quick recap: standard PR path 10 years, spouse route 3-year marriage plus 1-year residence, visa revocation risk after 6 months of inactivity, spousal inheritance share up to all, 100%. That's what marrying a Japanese citizen actually changes, not the myth, but the real mechanics underneath it. Subscribe for the rest of this visa and residency series, and for more data-driven breakdowns of life and investing in Japan.
And that's today's breakdown. If you're serious about real estate or moving to Japan, research like this is exactly what separates a smart decision from an expensive mistake. Subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive, and drop a comment if there's a city or word you want us to cover next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.